Hello, everyone. Dr. Victoria Skirbo here, speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center in Wareham, Massachusetts. It's time for the astrology of the week ahead. That is the week of from Sunday, August 7th to Saturday, August 13th. So let's get started. Okay, so we're in the second week of August, and you can see I put a little alarm clock next to this week. This is the wake up week, guys. So we'll just go the major highlights, and then we'll look more deeply into some of the astrology. So today is Sunday, August 7th, and we have two major aspects today. We have Venus making a waxing trine to Neptune, and we have Mars making a first quarter square to Saturn. These two aspects couldn't really be much different if they tried. Trines are flowing aspects, and so there isn't any struggle associated with trines. So we're dealing with Venus, the planet of love, the planet of our essential needs, the planet of what we value, magnetic attraction, also the planet of the feminine, making a trine to Neptune, which is the higher octave of Venus, making this a particularly important sort of combination or planetary pair. The trine in itself has the energy of fire, so it is highly creative. It is a Leo side trine, and so this is a time of creative self-expression. So today is actually a wonderful day for creative inspiration. At the same time, we have Mars making a first quarter square to Saturn. This can create a sense of frustration. Squares are crisis producing. Mars is about forward motion in Taurus, slow and steady. And of course, Saturn is in Aquarius, asking us to look at structures and are they sufficient to support the collective, Aquarius, raising all boats, Aquarius, all of those things. That's the test here. How well are the structures built in order to support the energy of Aquarius? And we might say not very well. So this first quarter square is a crisis in action. We feel the need to take an action. There is hard work ahead to build foundations, and this can create feelings of frustration. So while it's a very inspiring day creatively, when it comes down to the brass tacks of actually getting things done and building the structure, we may feel a little held back or a lot held back, and this can create frustration. This is not a day to go speeding around on the highway because you will be caught. On August 9th, which is a Tuesday, which is my mother's 102nd birthday, happy birthday, Angelina, God willing, right? We have a Venus opposite Pluto. Venus and Pluto have a very interesting relationship. Of course, Venus, the goddess of love, Pluto, the god of the underworld. Venus and Pluto always have an intense, passionate, and often controlling or trying to escape the control of powers greater than self, especially when it comes to the feminine. And so this opposition brings a point of awareness. Well, what's the awareness? It's the awareness of seeds planted at the Venus-Pluto conjunctions, of which there were three. Two in December of 2021 and one in March of 2022. And we'll look more deeply into that a little later. We also have on August 9th, Mercury making in conjunct to Jupiter. This is a need for mental adjustments. Mercury and Jupiter are planets associated with the mind and the brain. And so we're a little off kilter when it comes to our right and our left brain sort of lined up. In this example, we are still collecting information so that we can come up with some sort of perspective that's going to be of value that we can share with the world, but we're still sort of working on that at this time. So we can tend towards a little bit of a sense of like we have all the answers. But then something happens and we realize that we don't. And so we need to figure out a way to take what's best from our answers in order to share them with others, and be humble in our capacity to examine our own minds and our own ideas. On August 11th, we have the Sun making a first quarter square to Uranus. This is a crisis in action square. It is a crisis in action to actualize the changes needed for freedom. For freedom, Uranus is all about freedom. We also have Venus making her ingress into Leo at this time. Mars making a sextile to Neptune. This is all happening on the 11th. Mars sextile Neptune. Now, when Mars and Neptune get together, there's usually confusion and we don't know where to go and we don't know what to do because Neptune tends to fuzz things up. But the sextile between Mars and Neptune is actually a wonderful aspect to have between Mars, Neptune aspects are generally challenging because of the obfuscating nature of Neptune. But when you have it in a sextile or a trine, there's a flow of energy. The sextile always stimulates our mental capacity. And so this is an opportunity to open the lines of communication, to act on our ideals, Neptune, acts of compassion, Neptune, or connection to spirit. So, that old Flip Wilson thing, the devil made me do it. Or maybe Jesus made me do it, or the divinity or the divine oneness of all things made me do it. Whatever you like. And of course, probably I don't know if the biggest thing that happens is the full moon in Aquarius. This is the halfway point of the lunation cycle that began with the new moon in Leo at 6 degrees of Leo. We remember that, right? This is a point of illumination and what has grown from the initial seed. So on the 11th, which is a Thursday, we're going to get an eyeful of what was planted on that 28th of July new moon. All right, let's take some looks at the actual astrology of what's going on. So we start with today. We have August 7th. Incidentally, it vibrates to a 21-3, which is the world card in the tarot. So it's a natural ending and new beginning. We have Venus making a waxing trine to Neptune. This is a chart for the US, so apologies to anybody else who lives anywhere else. We see the sun. We see Venus here at 26 degrees of Cancer. We see Neptune at 26 degrees of Pisces. From the 5th to the 9th house here, this is a trine. This has the energy of the trine in itself has the energy of Leo. As it sits in this chart, we are also bringing the energy of Sagittarius as we have Neptune in the 5th house and Venus in the 9th house. So this is part of the synodic cycle of the Venus Neptune that began with the conjunction of these two planets on the 27th of April, and it occurred at 25 degrees of Pisces. So the Sabian symbol for 25 degrees of Pisces is a very interesting one. It says a religious organization succeeded in overcoming the corrupting influences of perverted practice and materialized ideals. The power of the soul to intervene in the personal life and to induce necessary catharsis. So really, the initial symbol for this has to do with rooting out the baser energies of a particular organized religion or organization, in order to really bring the spirit of the organization, perhaps the spirit of the religion to bear on people, and not necessarily the dogma or even the underhanded stuff that people do to have power and maintain power in these organizations. Now we have Venus at 26 degrees of Cancer and Neptune at 26 degrees of Pisces. Venus at 26 of Cancer, guests are reading in a library of a luxurious home, and I love that. And Neptune is watching a very thin moon crescent appearing at sunset. Different people realize that the time has come to go ahead with their different projects. And so it almost feels as if the initial conjunction was a meeting of all these people who are trying to purify, in a way, organizations that are supposedly there for our spiritual upliftment. And now we come to the point of this trine where the creative expression of that energy requires us to share the knowledge that we have, to look at people who have perhaps more knowledge than we do, maybe because they have more money than we do. After all, if you have a lot of money, you have a lot of spare time. And any of us people who love to read and love to learn know that there isn't enough time in the day to do your chores and to do the reading, right? So there's that energy. All right, let's take a look. We also have Mars making that first quarter square to Saturn. We can see this here in this chart. We have Saturn in the second house in Aquarius. This is our resources, right? And Saturn in Aquarius requires fair distribution of those resources. And here we have Mars in the sixth house of service. It's also the house of military. It's the house of health and the like. And so we could see a struggle to take care of perhaps a health issue. Maybe this is the monkeypox issue that's happening, or a COVID issue, or something like that, or it could be military. Although the U.S. doesn't seem to have any problem spending money on military stuff, but a lot of problems spending it on people that need it. So this particular crisis in action was seated at the 4/4 2022 portal. It was a 4/4 portal, right? That vibration on that day was a 14/5. This is the Temperance card, so this is an opportunity for healing, and it comes with that sense of climbing the mountain, the path of the mystic, the straight and narrow, that kind of energy. So this is something that's quite doable, but very, very difficult and can be arduous at times. Just the energy of that initial conjunction with the numerology. It occurred at 23 degrees of Aquarius. If we look at the Sabian symbol, it says a big bear sits down, waving all its paws. Self-discipline, which results from an intelligent development of individual faculties under proper training. So this is about being disciplined, right? This is about being disciplined, using your intelligence, getting the proper training so that you can sort of climb the mountain of the mystic, which is what this is kind of about. We now have Mars. Now, the interesting thing about this is Saturn is still at that same degree. But Mars, of course, has moved on, and Mars is at 23 degrees of Taurus. And here we have a jewelry shop filled with valuable gems, the social confirmation of natural excellence. So this indicates a sense of sort of taking actions or moving on things that most people consider valuable, But again, can be a frustrating day. So let's talk about Venus and Pluto, the opposition of Venus and Pluto. We can see that here in this chart. We have Venus here in the third house. We have Pluto up here in the ninth house. Of course, we can't separate this, what's going on here, with the whole Roe versus Wade situation that we have in the country. If we look here, we have Venus is at 27 degrees of Cancer. The symbol here is a violent storm in a canyon filled with expensive homes. We've seen this symbol before. A confrontation with a social upheaval demanding a reconsideration of static values. So Venus is requiring Pluto right, the powerful Pluto, to reconsider values, what's important, what's not important. It's indicated in the last aspect with the jewelry symbol. Incidentally, that 23 degrees of Taurus was the degree that we had the last, before 2020, the last Saturn Jupiter cycle. It was at 23 degrees of Taurus in the year 2000. And then, of course, in 2020, at the end of 2020, we had those two planets come back together in the first degree of Aquarius. So that 20-year cycle between 2020, 2000 and 2020 dealt with our issues around what is a value and what is not a value. And within that time frame, we've gone through, or certainly I have gone through, a big shift in what's important to me, what are my values, right? And I think we've all sort of come to that. Now we come in 2020, we have this conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter come back together. It's a 20-year cycle. And of course, it has the flavor of Aquarius, as does a lot of things happening. That first degree of Aquarius seems very, very active over the last couple of years. And then, of course, we're going to have Pluto move into that degree at the beginning of, in March, I think, of next year. So we're not quite done with that first degree of Aquarius. It's sort of like a new world, right? Moving into a new world. Anyway, this Venus in Cancer is opposing Pluto at 27 degrees of Capricorn. Pilgrims climbing the steep steps lead to a mountain shrine. The ascent of the individualized consciousness to the highest realizations reached by spiritual leaders of its culture. And so we're being required to ask a different, for an awareness around a different set of values, and evaluating the values that we've had in the past. Do they still line up with the values that we have? And it's interesting because the Pope, I don't know if he's still there, but last few weeks he was, or a week or 2 weeks ago, he was in Canada talking to the natives there, the indigenous people, asking for forgiveness, or sending out an olive branch, or whatever you might consider it, for what the church was associated with when it came to the Indian schools. So we can see this being expressed in the outer world as well. This day we also have an inconjunct between Mercury and that I spoke of, Mercury and Jupiter, and that's what this is right here. I just want to point that out. Of course, Mercury is powerfully placed in Virgo. It is the sign of its rulership. Jupiter in Aries is a little less powerfully placed. So really the person who has the last word here is the person who likes words. That's Mercury. Okay, on the 11th, so this is the day of the full moon, and we can see here, at least at this point, is this the day of the full moon? Sun? Yes, this is the day of the full moon. Not quite full at this point. This is the sun making a first quarter square to Uranus. Here's the sun at 19 degrees of Leo. Here is Uranus at 19 degrees of Taurus. This is a crisis in action. So this is the first sort of quarter of this aspect. This is where we have the crisis. It began with a conjunction of these two planets. And when we have the sun and Uranus come together, it's about illumination around freedom. It says here 15 degrees, head covered with rakish silk hat, muffled against the cold. A man braves a storm, and certainly we have been braving quite a few storms these days. The courage needed to meet the crisis precipitated by social ambition. Some people have quite a bit of social ambition, and they're paying the price now, aren't they? At this point, we are taking an action. And now if we look at the symbology of the sun at 19 degrees of Leo, we have a houseboat party, the enjoyment of temporary freedom from the rigidity of structured behaviors, freedom from social rigidity in a crisis in action square to Uranus, a new continent rising out of the ocean, the surge of new potentiality after a crisis, spontaneity. Spontaneity. So we have people on a boat, and then we have a continent rising out of the ocean. I don't know if I'd want to be on that boat necessarily. I can imagine the ocean would get pretty choppy with the continent coming up. But I think the point is really a point of it's a point of freeing yourself from some of the more socially rigid rules, regulations, things that keep you entrapped, from being your authentic self, because that's really what the sun in Leo is about. And of course, we know there's all kinds of people trying to tell other people who they are and who they're not, and trying to define them and not allowing the person to define themselves. Let a person define themselves. What does it matter to you? It's no skin off your nose. Anyway, that's my opinion. I'm full of opinions. And here we have the full moon in Aquarius, and we can see here with the sun here at 20 degrees of Taurus, of Leo, and then the moon at 20 degrees of Aquarius. It is conjunct Saturn, and so this is and full moons are always points of awareness, so we can see sort of where we stand and the suffering perhaps of people, and you know, the sun in a chart is often the leader, so the leader becoming aware of the challenges that the people face. We can see here that we have a giant square here. That means we have a grand fixed cross in here if we include the full moon, the sun, the nodes, and of course we can't forget Uranus there, right? So the sun is at 20 degrees of Leo opposite the moon at 20 degrees of Aquarius. This is about the new moon. This is a point of awareness around the new moon. The new moon at 6 degrees of Leo. The sun now at 20 degrees of Leo, the Sabian symbol being Zuni Indians perform a ritual to the sun, interestingly enough. And of course, the sun is the ruling planet of Leo, so it's powerfully placed in Leo. A return to the glorification of natural energies. We have this theme again about nature and a new set of values and the power of nature and the power of our connection to nature and our power to our connection to our higher spiritual frequencies. We have the moon at 20 degrees of Aquarius, a large white dove bearing a message, the answer of spiritual agencies to thorough, sustained, and victorious individual efforts. So what is it saying? It's saying that Spirit is listening to our requests. Spirit is in alignment. Now, we may not be fully, right? I mean, when I say Spirit, I don't necessarily mean God sitting on the throne judging people. I'm talking about the spirit of unity, the spirit of coming together, the spirit of life versus death, life being the life-giving sun. It's important for us to be aware of what we need and to work in that direction. And this I think full moon gives us an eyeful of what is necessary for us. So next week we're going to look at the week ahead, the third week, and you can see next to that we have a giant tidal wave. And so we have a wake-up call this week, and next week the dam breaks. So you can keep posted for that. I am going to stop my share now so you can see me. Hi. So we have a pretty active week. That full moon really does bring a lot of awareness. We see where we're at. We see what needs to be done. And then the tide shifts and the dam breaks the next week. And we will see what that'll mean next week. Have yourself a wonderful week. Please take care of yourself. Stay cool if you're in a hot place. Stay warm if you're in a cold place. Stay balanced no matter what place you're in. knowing that you are loved and you are on the right track. Have yourself a great week, guys, and I'll see you again next week. Namaste, everyone. I love you.